back to Startup Nomad. We are here again with Michael Goldberg, who teaches entrepreneurial finance at Case Western University, Reserve University, sorry, in Cleveland, Ohio. And if you watch Startup Nomad, you will recognize his name and his face because I interviewed him. When was that, Michael? I guess back in like the late winter, early spring of this year. Because I was about to participate in Michael's massive open online course on Coursera called Beyond Silicon Valley. And so that was an awesome course. And since then, Michael has been out and around visiting students and other participants pretty much all around the world, but a large chunk in the Mediterranean. So I just wanted to check back in with Michael, see how all of his adventures went this summer, and get him to tell us a little bit more about what's going on with his course, because the second round starts up next month. So welcome back, Michael.
Great, it's great to be back.
So yeah, how about maybe we start out, if you can tell us a little bit about what happened with your course, because when I first talked to you, it hadn't launched yet, and that was your first time teaching a MOOC, and it was the first time for the Beyond Silicon Valley course. So maybe let us know how it went.
Sure, I'd be happy to. And because we attracted students like you and others from around the world that have a deep interest in entrepreneurship, have a deep interest in seeing the growth of startup companies in their communities, for me, it was an amazing experience. We had 23,000 students from 183 countries, so really awesome participation from around the world. And I think one of the really positive, there were a number of things that were awesome about it from my perspective. I think one was the dialogue between communities around the world. I think I had a premise when we set up the course based on my own experience living in Cleveland, Ohio, which is certainly not known around the world as a hotspot of entrepreneurship. But what we did here, and kind of what we talk about in the course, was over the last 10 years, through support of government, donors, and the private sector, we've tried to creatively be supportive of entrepreneurship. And as you know, and as many of the people you talk to on Startup Nomad talk about, it takes capital, it takes mentoring, it takes support. And it really sort of literally takes a village of people sort of coming together and leaders coming together and taking a long-term view. So the exchange of ideas and dialogue between students was amazing. So I'd kind of go to sleep. My wife would be like, "Can you come to bed?" I'd be in the discussion boards, talking with somebody in Asia and posting ideas and sharing ideas. And frankly, it wasn't so much me as a professor telling anybody what they should be doing. The course isn't structured like that. It's kind of to give examples and to hopefully spur dialogue, and that's exactly what it did. And then I'd wake up in the morning and I'd see, people in Asia were answered by people in Europe or Africa or other places. So that exchange of ideas was really made it all worthwhile for me. And as you mentioned, we're doing it again in October. So looking to build on the success we had the first time around and continue to hopefully support communities around the world.
Awesome. And now I know that quite a few of the participants got really into it and actually invited you to come out and kind of meet the people in their entrepreneurial community. And obviously, I gave you a much longer intro the first time that I interviewed you, but you've traveled all around the world before and taught entrepreneurship in different parts of the world, so this certainly isn't the first time you've gotten out of Cleveland to see entrepreneurial communities. But I'd love to hear what that experience was like for you, meeting some of these entrepreneurs. I know Greece was very active, and some other countries or even cities in the Mediterranean area, and you did a little bit of a European tour this summer to visit some of them. So I'd love to hear what you saw when you went to visit your students.
Sure. It was an amazing opportunity. We were lucky for the first run of the MOOC to have some really good partners that helped promote the course through social media channels and other channels, and also organized local meetups where they were gathering MOOC students. And not surprisingly, given the medium, some people, honestly, like yourself, who travels wherever you are and your computer is that day is where you can watch a MOOC or interview somebody for Startup Nomad. So, a number of students weren't necessarily able to be in one place on a regular basis, or they were doing it kind of in their off hours from work. We had some really good success, and you mentioned Greece as an example. The U.S. Embassy in Greece was enthusiastic about the course, and I mean, Greece is not a place that I had ever been before. There was nothing about my course that was necessarily tailored to a Greek audience, but I think this idea, particularly in a place like Greece that went through such a challenging economic transition, and they're still going through it, and you know, there's lots of entrepreneurs sort of throughout Greek history, but what you're seeing now in Greece is because of the collapse of the economy, because of the inability for many people who would normally get government jobs to get those jobs, you're having kind of this confluence of events that's like entrepreneurship has sort of never been hotter there and never been of more interest. So there was a lot of interest in Greece. We worked with a number of partners there. They, with the support of the U.S. Embassy, they filmed some of their own videos, and then, as you mentioned, they brought me over there. So I did a month-long trip this summer to Greece, Macedonia, Czech Republic, and to Spain, where actually you and I had a chance to meet in person, which was awesome. And it was funny. I mean, I'm not a well-known professor. I mean, I'm a professor of practice. I don't have books on entrepreneurship. For me, this MOOC was a chance to connect with people, but it was kind of like in like a weird way, like this sort of, I'll say, rock star moment, not because I'm a rock star, but that people had seen me, they'd watched the video. So for any of the Startup Nomad viewers who are sort of taking the MOOC or watching the MOOC, you'll see me kind of with a lot of other entrepreneurs and thought leaders sort of, and it's really more documentary style, but what it was able to do for me is I showed up in a number of these places and met with students who only knew me from watching videos, and they're like, I can't believe you're sitting here. I'm like, I can't believe I'm sitting here. I mean, it was great. And one of the nice things is that we were able to continue a dialogue. I didn't have to introduce myself. They knew about me. I certainly didn't know much about them, although for some of the students, I really did get to know them kind of in the discussion forums. And we were able to continue a dialogue that we started in the MOOC about entrepreneurship. So it was an awesome trip. And one of the things that we're trying to do, and would love folks kind of in the Startup Nomad network who might be interested in, is to do more of that, where communities could host meetups. And again, it could be anything. The videos are short. The videos are they have 9 video lectures that are about 12 minutes long. In a lot of these meetups, they get together, watch the video. And we do have subtitles in some languages, in Spanish, Greek. We just had Persian, Farsi subtitles for the new run. And there's a couple of other places like Czech Republic and Albania. And actually somebody's working on French subtitles, which helps. I mean, it helps with the reach. So the idea would be people get together, watch a video, and then have a local discussion. So if it's on the role of government, they might invite a local government official to have a discussion with them. It could be on the role of universities. And that's a really powerful way, I think, to deepen the student experience. I'm really excited. The more folks kind of in networks, whether it's my network, the Startup Nomad network, that could, if they're interested in this, I'd certainly encourage them to reach out to me, and I can sort of help give some advice. But a lot of the things that happened for the first MOOC were some were organized by U.S. Embassy, some were sort of organic. So it was a great trip.
Awesome. And so, since that was your first time teaching MOOC, I'm sure you learned a little bit about doing it. Are there any changes that we should expect for round 2?
So it was a huge learning experience. I think like anything, and in some ways it was like if you talk to any kind of entrepreneur about their first startup and kind of what they learned and what they would do differently, I mean, very much the MOOC was my startup. So we will be keeping the video lecture the same. And I think for folks, I mean, you've seen them. I mean, it was a lot of work to put those together in the interviews, and I felt like they held up. So we'll use those video lectures again, and it's a Cleveland case study, and then some assorted interviews that we did from people kind of in the global community who gave their perspective. One of the things we're working on right now, and the course launches October 3rd, and I don't know if you, in Startup Nomad, if you've talked to any of the folks from World Startup Report, Boe Guy,
I haven't, no.
They're doing some interesting work, and I'd encourage you and your viewers to check them out. Boe sold his company to LinkedIn, and basically, actually, he's very similar to you. He sort of like packed his bag and started traveling around. And one of the things that he's doing in coordination with a couple folks working there, and then a number of ambassadors around the world, is they're building ecosystem reports on sort of entrepreneurial ecosystem reports on a country basis. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I'm intrigued by is how, for students that are contributing assignments to the course, and the assignments of the course, and unfortunately in the kind of MOOC world, you don't have that ability. So we have some quizzes, we have a final exam that are kind of auto graded. We have some assignments, what we call personal learning assignments and action learning assignments, where folks are kind of looking at entrepreneurship and how it's supported in their community. Those are kind of graded by word count, although I do go in and sort of take a look at them. And then we have a final project where I'm asking folks to take a look at, sort of through the eyes of an entrepreneur in their community, whether they're an entrepreneur or they're interviewing entrepreneurs, to look at how those entrepreneurs are being supported or where the gaps are. So one of the things that I'm trying to do with World Startup Report is so that students are contributing something that has further value. Because I think, like any teacher, you're sort of like, well, to students, like, what do you want to do with the course? I mean, hopefully it was a good experience, but like, how did it help you? And that's a piece of it, but like, how are you going to action it? So what we're hoping to do for this run, and the course starts in a month, so we're still kind of tweaking and putting the pieces together, is to provide even more opportunities, and World Startup Report is one, for the students' work to feed into something greater. And so we're trying to make sure that we align the assignments and what we're asking to kind of and World Startup Report, it's a volunteer effort. So, they have ambassadors in countries. Our course is very community oriented. So, and I think this well, Kate, just from your travels, like, and certainly living in Cleveland, I mean, you couldn't generalize about entrepreneurship in the US because Boston, Cleveland, a small rural community, Silicon Valley, everything looks different. And that's true overseas as well. So if there's a student in Barcelona, and there's a student in Logroño, Spain, they may have a very different view. So how these contributions from students feed into these country reports is something sort of we're working on. But a lot of my thoughts are about how to make it more valuable, kind of long-term for students. And I've been really thrilled, like a number of students I've stayed in touch with, there's certain projects that they're working on to support entrepreneurship that have been somewhat, they're inspired is the wrong word, because they probably would have, they're just so dedicated and motivated, but they credit the course in helping kind of them take some things that they were thinking about and putting them into action. So I want to continue to encourage that whichever way I can.
Yeah, awesome. Well, in my travels, that is one of the things that a lot of people have said, that in some of these countries where the entrepreneurial ecosystems aren't necessarily as mature, they need somebody to say, hey, this is something you can do, even if you're not Silicon Valley, even if you're not Manhattan, you can build an ecosystem in whatever your community is. So I think that offering your course and showing how different communities that are maybe a little bit smaller, maybe don't have all the resources, maybe don't have all the money of some of these bigger, more famous entrepreneurial hubs does make a big difference, and kind of give people, serve as the catalyst they need to feel like they can go out and do it. So
yeah,
I definitely encourage anybody
and I appreciate your perspective on that, Kate, and you've seen a lot, and I do think people have sort of used the course that way, and even in the discussion forums, because this stuff's hard, it takes a long time. There are a number of countries around the world where corruption is, and sort of government inefficiency, because we do talk a lot in the course about the role the government plays in here, and in the U.S. it's hard to kind of get governments and political leaders to kind of look past their next election cycle and take a long-term view on this, which I think is critical. But there are some other countries around the world where it is just, again, kind of between kind of corruption and inefficiency, it's really hard. And I think what some of the discussion forums served as is almost like a support group. I mean, somebody would be complaining in Greece about something, and then someone from Nigeria would chime in. And again, this isn't to like paint a brush that like, all sort of government support in Greece or Nigeria or whatever is hard or bad, and a lot of these would be sort of very individual stories. But I think people took away this, okay, there are others around the world that are kind of going through the same thing. And I think one of the challenges is, and I think you do a really good job of this, Kate, in sort of talking, to people around the world and sharing other stories. I mean, it's actually amazing to me how many people are reading like Recode or TechCrunch or Mashable and like, who knows where. And those publications tend to focus on Silicon Valley and these like really awesome success stories. And they're also, I read it too. I mean, they're inspiring, and we want to be inspired. We want to read about Instagram and Square and Uber and Snapchat and all these companies, and those are great, but like those aren't always core, like those aren't always the best examples for kind of the outside of Silicon Valley community. So I think some of like, and again, the MOOC I think is one way, but sort of, and I think what you do with your interviews is another way, where we just, and I think Global Entrepreneurship Week does some really good stuff as well. Jonathan Orman's sharing some of his blog is, something on Macedonia recently and Paraguay. So we need to tell these other stories and connect people. So I felt like the MOOC is sort of one small way to do it. I think what you're doing is another way to do it, and part of it is just connecting the dots. I mean, finding people in your network and finding people in the MOOC network and finding people in the World Startup Report network, and that can be really powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, that's the other thing. One thing that it doesn't matter what community they're in. I always ask anybody I interview, and I asked you last time, so I won't ask you again, but for a bit of advice for aspiring entrepreneurs, and everybody says you have to get out there and network. You have to get out there and network. It's so important to make those connections with people, and your MOOC is one great way to do that on a very global level, as opposed to, going to your local tech events, which are still wonderful and you absolutely should go to them, but then you're only getting the little, the little Lima perspective or whatever. And the MOOC helps you be able to learn from entrepreneurs and communities that are at a different stage of development than you, and that's hugely helpful in my opinion.
Yeah, and I continue. I think this idea of kind of marrying global content and global perspectives with sort of local discussions, and how we do that. I mean, I'm continuing, and I'm talking to a number of folks. I mean, I think there's a number of, like, as an example, Microsoft with their Microsoft Innovation Centers, they're doing some really neat things to support entrepreneurship. They have 95 innovation centers around the world. Could they be hubs for dialogue? Could we use the MOOC there? I've talked to folks from Google for Entrepreneurs. They're doing some amazing work to support entrepreneurship. Telefonica through Wyra in places like Spain or Czech Republic, some other places. So there's some really nice intersections between, and we actually talk about this a lot in the MOOC, between donors broadly defined, and donors could be, big, governments or USAID or DFID, which is the British aid agency, or the World Bank. It could be donors doing stuff for kind of corporate social responsibility. I mean, Pierre Omidyar and the Omidyar Network, who's the founder of eBay, he's doing some amazing work around supporting entrepreneurship and kind of this, this social entrepreneurship kind of intersection where investors, and we talk about that a lot in the class as well, where like there are investors outside of Silicon Valley, and they could be sitting in, Cleveland, Phnom Penh, Dar es Salaam, that are interested in supporting local entrepreneurs as angels or as part of seed acceleration programs, where they realize that the return on investment will likely not be the same as if they deployed capital actually through I met people in Greece that were using AngelList to invest in Silicon Valley-based startup companies, and that's a pure return on investment focus. And some of these same folks were also beginning to deploy money at home, so a little bit more slowly, but with both return on investment and let's call it social or community goals. So that, and that, I think you're seeing more and more of that, which is great.
Absolutely. Well, I'll definitely put the link to your course sign-up page in my blog post, and I definitely encourage anybody, well, even if you took it last time, I encourage you to sign up again. I'm going to sign up again, but definitely, especially those people that didn't take it last time, should sign up. But is there anything that you want to, last words that you want to tell us about the course?
Sure. I mean, and thank you for sharing it. I think, I mean, it is free, so it's good. I mean, there is like a pay, you could kind of get a verified certificate. Very few people do that, and it's not important to do it. So I think it's just a good reminder to your viewers that the course is free. And again, I would encourage, anybody that's watching this, I mean, you can send me an email, michael.goldberg@case.edu, and Kate will probably, I'm on Twitter and Facebook. I mean, if this resonates for you and you want to take the class and you want to kind of try to organize some folks in your community to get together, I'm happy to join, just kind of like this through a Google Hangout or a Skype conversation. I'm happy to kind of connect some of the resources in my network. So, I'd encourage anybody that is in your network or watching this interview that kind of wants to not only sort of take the MOOC, but maybe kind of take some leadership in their community and gathering some people together. I'd love to work with you. And again, I think that experience will deepen the impact of the course, and hopefully, again, in your own community, then among the many things that may be sort of going on, if this can be a catalyst, sort of as you said, Kate, for people to do things forward, then I feel like I'm doing my job here, because I mean, there's nothing makes me happier than people like actually trying to do something based on what they learned in the class. So, would love to connect with folks in the network that would want to get more involved.
Awesome. And so after the end of the last course, you said you did your European tour. Do you have plans for visiting some of the participants for this upcoming session, or not quite yet?
No, it's a great call. I'm actually working on it now. It's still not set, but if everything, my current plans are actually to go to Africa. Not 100% sure kind of where. Looks like we'll be collaborating with some folks in Rwanda, Namibia, Mozambique, South Africa, potentially Zimbabwe and Zambia around this run of the MOOC, and I likely will be teaching the MOOC again in April. Okay. So we'll run this session in October, and for those who missed it, we'll do it again in the spring. And then, yeah, it was such an awesome. Again, I think you embody this in sort of what you do, because you're out connecting with people in person. I mean, there's no substitute. As great as our technology is. But you can't substitute sort of being face to face. So I'm really hoping to do that, and I actually brought my daughter with me to Greece, Macedonia, and Czech Republic, my 11-year-old, and then met up with my wife and other 2 kids in Spain, which was great. And then but I'm hoping to bring another, because I have 3 kids. I have to pick a different kid this time, but I might bring I think I might bring my son with me to do some work. I have teaching kind of duties here until the end of April, but yeah, my plan is, like you, to kind of pack my bags and be out kind of doing this work with people in communities in the spring.
Awesome. Well, I'll be anxious to hear how things go in Africa, because I have not visited a single country in Africa yet. So I will be very interested to see what it's like for you there and what's going on in the entrepreneurial communities.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be excited. I lived in South Africa earlier in my career for about 3 years but it was I ran voter education programs for the South African elections when Mandela was elected in '94, before I went to business school and kind of embarked on a private sector career. So I've stayed in touch with some people, and we had a lot of great African students. So I'm excited to go back. Kate, you'll just have to get some more pages in your passport and join us over there.
Yeah, definitely. Well, awesome. Thank you so much for your time again, Michael.
Great. Thanks, Kate. It was great talking to you.